different age groups and that. But I'm going to be quite open and honest about my journey, I suppose. So I hope it'll help people on here. So I'm going to go through my journey from coming back from England, or from going to England to coming back to eventually return from the game completely. And then I'll go through some of the, I suppose, decisions that helped inform me of my next career. And then I'll go on to some CV advice. I suppose the area I'm working now is recruitment, and I'm looking at CVs every day. So hopefully I can help some of you guys with that side of things as well, to help you when you are going for jobs, and what's, little tips to look out for. So yeah, anyone that doesn't know me, I left home at 15 years of age, only had my junior cert, and went across to Ipswich Town. I see one of my old colleagues, Ron and Murray there, my old big pals. And I had 7 years over there before packing in the game and returning to Ireland in 2009. And worst possible time, probably similar to the situation maybe that's going on in the country or in the world at the moment, recession. And there was no jobs. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Had a kind of a plan B. I always had a plan B in my head, was to join the Guards and following in my dad's footsteps. But when I came back, there was no recruitment. It had been frozen. So I had to look into what I would do. I did go back and complete my leaving cert, but only the subjects that were required to join the Guards. I got them and went back down to my old school. Didn't get the uniform back on, but managed to get through the subjects that were required and passed them all. But the ban on recruitment was extended, so it was 5 years really before they opened it up, and by that time, life had moved on and had to move on. So I wasn't sure where I fit into the world, and I did took on a couple of roles which I was lucky to get through my network and through football in particular. The GA was quite helpful at the time, and that's where I went back down playing. So I worked in a hospital for 3.5 years in different roles, working on the wards as a care attendant, in the physio department as a physio assistant. Enjoyable roles, helping people, which is something I will be passionate about, but not something that I wanted to do long term. And I was still figuring this all out in my head. Didn't know really where to turn or who to turn to for support with that. So I took on another position then in a sports management company as such. A friend of mine was setting up, and worked in event management and kind of managing, young lads that maybe are going away to the UK and supporting them and their families and trying to help them make the right decision and negotiating contracts, etc. So, but did that for a number of years as well. Still trying to figure it out. It wasn't something I wanted to do long term. There wasn't really a career in it long term, I suppose, which also pushed me down a different road. But I was lucky I came across someone. I was always open to meeting people and chatting to them and trying to utilize my network and figure things out. But a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, put me in touch with someone. I didn't know who this person was or what he did, but he turned out to be a life coach. He worked with the GA and a lot of the players in the GA, and I suppose around 2016 I met this person, and you'll see later on in some of the stuff I'm going to talk about in terms of education and that. I only copped it myself tonight, or in the last couple of days looking at it. I had a block, I suppose, in terms of education, from leaving school at 15, and I was reluctant to go back into it because I didn't feel I was good enough or capable in that space academically. So I put it off for a long time. But the person I met, he helped me, I suppose, get a bit of a better sense of who I was, where I fit in the world, and what I needed going forward, to be happy and successful. So in terms of what I was interested in, what I was passionate about, financially as well, what I needed to live, and the lifestyle I wanted. So it just helped me put a bit of structure on things and a bit of shape on things, and make better decisions, I suppose, going forward, which I think a lot of players struggle with in terms of where they fit. They might follow what their parents did because it's what they wanted to do, what they want their kids to do, or what their siblings did, or what a teammate maybe did, and it's not necessarily something they're interested in or passionate about. So I had a couple of meetings with this guy over a space of 3 months, and it helped push me in the right direction in terms of getting back into education and that really opened my eyes up to, you know, I was actually capable, you know, in that space, and managed to get a couple of diplomas over, you know, a short space of time, and upskill in certain areas, and areas that I was interested in and passionate about. At the same time, I went back in playing with Bohemians full time, and that was, you know, another thing. I was obviously passionate about that and wanted to get back playing at a professional level again. So that helped me. And then obviously I had to retire in 2018 through injury. So, but I suppose I was lucky in that sense. I had prepared for it. It wasn't as much as I didn't want to retire. I was comfortable in the decision. I was comfortable with what was coming next. I had a bit of a plan, although it was still had to materialize and pan out. But I suppose for me, what I found out, and maybe it's down to the position I played in a little bit as well, is you have to be prepared to put your ego to the side when you're taking up, you know, your next step. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be knockbacks. You're going to be uncomfortable. And you just have to be resilient, I suppose. And if it's something that you really believe in and you're passionate about, you have to take those knocks and continue forward. So that led me into, I suppose, the area I'm in now in recruitment, and it's an area I really enjoy. I'm not sure if it's something I'll stay in forever, but it's definitely serving me now, and it's given me, you know, I suppose the life I want, the satisfaction I need from my second career as such. So, but there are other, you know, things I want to achieve down the line, and it will probably entail, you know, further education, maybe a degree or a master's at some stage. But that's I suppose my journey, and some of the thoughts that went through my head, are the difficulties and roadblocks I came up against. So this is I suppose, with the life coach I met, and some of the areas that helped me in terms of my passion and my interest for the future going forward. This is a bit of the structure that was put on it for me. So I suppose a lot of, you know, players are facing different choices maybe at the moment, in terms of education, maybe, in terms of employment, and life after football. So like some of us might be at the stage we're looking at a course or a degree educationally. You know, if there's opportunity for scholarships, you know, what course will that be? What degree would that be? You know, some of us might be, well, I need to work. I'm part-time, or I'm coming to the end of my career. I need a job now to support my family, or whatever that might be. You know, some of us might have the option of looking a bit longer term, and, you know, we're going to play for another 5 to 10 years. So we have, you know, time to plan and really sit down and think about it, what it's going to look like for me when I finish, and where am I going to be happy, I suppose, is the next one. And then just what is informing those decisions for us, like, why are you making the choices you're making now? Like, I had a call there this week with a guy who's, you know, he took on a degree. It turned out to be something he didn't want to do. In the end, it was pushed on him by his father, to follow in his footsteps. He's completed the degree, and he's looking at opportunities now, but the roles he's looking at are not applicable to his degree. He has no experience in that area. So, and these are a lot of things you see. Maybe it's friends or family. They go in and do a course because it's what my family wants, what my siblings did, and it turns out not to be something they're interested at all. But they never really put the thought into it, or really looked inwardly to see where they are, what their interests are, what they're passionate about, and is it actually something they're going to enjoy? You know, what kind of environment, if you go and, you know, and do a marketing degree, for instance, is that an environment you're going to be, you know, happy in, satisfied in when you come out the other side? Are you working in you know, the food and drinks industry, for instance? Is that an area you're interested in? If it's not, then why are you making, you know, that choice? So these are the things to think about. And again, are these decisions serving you? Are they going to make you happy? And really sitting down and reflecting on where you're at. And there's areas you can look to, you know, when you're a kid. You know, they say between 8 and 13, there's a lot of indication from that time to the areas that maybe you're interested in, from what you were up to, I suppose, the games you played, the people you hung out with. There are indications there of the areas. So it's, again, sitting down and you know, maybe thinking about those areas and going after them and figure it out, asking questions and holding yourself accountable to those decisions. So how can you make your decisions the best decision for you? So what are you passionate about? Obviously, we're all doing something. We were all lucky to do something that we are very passionate about and play the game. But unfortunately, it's not something that lasts forever. We have to get old, and we're going to slow down, and the game will be taken away from you at some stage from a playing point of view. So there's not many people who have to deal with that. And obviously there's a lot of talk about mental health issues for players post career, but we never really think about it a lot of time when that time is coming, and all of a sudden it creeps up on us, and we're looking around going, where do I fit, where do I go next? So the other things are, what do you value, what's important to you? Is it teamwork, community, leadership, status? These are all the things that you have to think about when you're making your decisions, and also what are you good at? What do you what interests you, and what have you been successful at? If it was school or other areas of your life that you have interest outside of football. So these are just little things to think about that will help inform your decisions going forward. So our passions. So these are things that make us tick. The reason you get out of bed in the morning, and that make you the happiest. So I know from playing the game, that's when I was the most happy. Will I ever get close to that again? I don't know. But I'm okay with that, I suppose. That's another aspect of it. But that's probably for another talk. But you need to consider, what is it that you're interested in? Have you got interest outside of the game? Areas that you like to switch off and get away from things. So these are areas you need to start thinking about. And then also, like, values. Some people have really strong values on what they need, and some of us don't even really realize what we need either. Again, we need to be maybe around people that we can trust. Integrity is important, honesty is important. So where are you going to find that in your next career? What areas or industries are going to give you that? And exploring those areas as much as possible. Again, for me, I put myself out there. I email people, phone people, executive level, and people in HR positions for a coffee and a chat to get an idea of their industry, their careers, how they went up the ladder, how they went about it. And these are the things, like, if there's people on that would like to speak to myself afterwards, I'm happy to do that, because people are good enough to do it for me. I mean, people want to help you, people want to talk to you, and especially with sports, we're a sport mad country. There's always doors there that are open. You just need to push them open, I suppose, and take the initiative yourself and hold yourself accountable. So again, some examples, obviously we're all passionate about football. Some of the values of that, I know I love playing in a team that, fall for each other every night of the week. You felt like you really belonged in that team. So these are things you can take into, your next career. So someone might be passionate about writing, journalism might be a career path for some. You enjoy, or you value creativity, imagination, and freedom around that. So these are again examples that you can lean on when you're looking at your next career move. And then what are your talents, what are your skills outside of the game that you're naturally good at, you've developed over the year, so they can cover a wide range of areas in that space. So I'll give you an example in a minute now of kind of how it would work, I suppose. So again, someone might be talented at working with numbers, someone might be talented in designing, you could be looking at architecture, building, creativity, marketing, something along those lines. And what you ideally want to get to stages where these three topics are aligning from your passions, your values, and your talents, and that is the sweet spot, I suppose. So again, you might be very passionate about I don't know, painting, cooking. You might value creativity and variety, and again, one of your talents is you're an excellent cook, for instance. So if we can get all these three to align together and figure out what careers are in that space, or what courses, degrees, apprenticeships, you need to target to get to that. So here's an example for you. So this person is passionate about sport, about reading, about people, about mental health, psychology. They value creativity and teamwork, meaning and fitness, and their talents are they're excellent listeners, and they're committed, they're athletic, they're good at motivating people. So some of the roles that might align with these interests and values would be, for instance, a physio, a personal trainer. You might look at sports science and doing a degree in that space. Sports management and psychology might be an area that you'd tap into, or nutrition, for instance. But that's just one example. And I know a lot of people in sport would possibly lean towards some of these careers. But they're just a few examples, and this is maybe an exercise that people can do. I know it's something that I did when I was trying to figure it all out, and just getting it down on paper really, and seeing what areas actually are you passionate about, and you might surprise yourself, in the areas that you value and you didn't really realize. It's important to have this in your next career.
Okay, so the first one that was sent in to me was it hard to manage your time when you were playing sport and studying?
Um, Yes and no. I suppose there's a lot of free time if you are just focusing on playing the game. Depending on your schedule. I know in the League of Ireland, for instance, when I was in college on Tuesday evening, so I was lucky enough that the manager allowed me to maybe skip a session or on the odd Tuesday evening to get to my lectures or that. Obviously, if you're a full time player training during the day, you may be able to work around that and schedule, or you might be in lectures during the day, but I was lucky enough to probably have a manager that was understanding and allowed me to concentrate as well on my academical side of things and my career after football. But it wasn't hard then in terms of coursework and all that because there's a lot of free time. So it's just structuring your day, I suppose, to get that work done. And again, holding yourself accountable really, to get the work done and not leaving it build up. So for me, it wasn't that difficult.
And what was the conversation with the manager initially like? Were you nervous about approaching them about asking for some time to balance stuff, or
No,
did you feel like they were kind of supportive of it, nor like they had communicated that
yeah,
previously?
I had a feeling that they would be, supportive of it. I suppose, knowing what the manager was like and how he valued that side of it, for players to support him that way, he felt that by giving a little, he'd get a lot more back, from the players. So again, I was lucky. I know not every manager is going to be like that, and they'd be reluctant maybe to release players for a night a week or whatever, or the odd week or two. But yeah, I suppose I was lucky with the manager I had at the time that allowed me to do that.
Yeah. And do you think, from your perspective now as a recruiter, is a degree necessary, or can people explore other kind of levels of education options? Does everybody need to go
No,
to
no,
university?
no, absolutely. That's gone. Like it is going. There are certain roles that will require a certain level of degree or masters, but a lot of them are chucking that out the window now. And it's more about the person. I suppose what they're bringing, and maybe their previous, experience in an industry or that, practical experience really. So it's not essential, and definitely not anymore. And I think when I'm looking at CVs and a lot of the clients I be dealing with, it's more about the fit and what they're bringing, to the table. And I think a lot of guys are reluctant maybe, and I would have been myself because I don't have that piece of paper, that degree. So I'm not maybe going to put myself out there, and my CV is not that, there's not much to put on my CV. So why is anyone going to give me a chance? But there are other ways of looking at it and approaching it, and trying to get in the door somewhere, and not just give up just because you feel, oh, they're not going to look at me because I've only played football, and why would they consider me? But I have, I suppose, in my couple of years, post career, I've really noticed what you can bring to the table, from your sporting career, and the different attributes that you've learned over the time. There's so many, I suppose, that are applicable to work. And I think lads, girls, they just need to realize that, and be a little bit more confident in that space and what they've done, and really look at it like, because there are So many attributes you can add to a company, and now a lot more companies are looking at sports people for those attributes that they can bring to their organization.
Fantastic. And the last question there that was sent in to me was, if you have several areas of interest, how do you make a decision then about what education to pursue?
I suppose there's a number of areas you can look at. If it's an arts degree, that's going to open the door to exploring some of those subjects and give you a taste for them all. Ideally, I think that would be the route you should go down, or you'd look to go down first. Maybe looking into it a little bit more in depth and in detail to try to figure out what opportunities some of those interests will lead you on to. The way the world is moving now, it's not like maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago on a lot of our parents' generation, where they have the one job for forever. They stick with the one organization. That's not the way it's happening now. I look at TVs and some people are 8 months here, a year and a half somewhere else, 2 years somewhere else, and it's constantly changing and evolving, and you need to obviously keep up with the times and upskill, and you're not going to stay in the one role, I wouldn't imagine, nowadays, for the rest of your life, for the one organization, unless you go into the public sector or you're, something like that. But it's very seldom nowadays that we see that, on CVs. People are moving around a lot more and have to constantly upscale with the way the world is moving, the digital space as well. Yeah, it is a lot different, I suppose, and we have a lot more options and opportunities, which can bring its own difficulties, maybe than what our parents would have had in the past. But I wouldn't be too afraid of that either.
Okay, so starting broad is a fine way to go ahead with something if you have a number of interests. You don't need to specialize on day one.
No, I wouldn't say you need to specialize in day one. And like looking back, I came back in 2009. I am, what are we, 2020 now? I'm 11 years nearly back, and it probably took me 7 years to really figure it out. I wish I could have figured it out a lot quicker, to be honest, but I still think that it will happen the way it was supposed to happen, which led me to where I am now. But I think it's being resilient. It's trusting the decisions you're making, that they will lead you to that place in the end. But it can take some more time for others. Some people are just lucky and they fall into it straight away. But I think it's just being resilient and driven to figure it out, really.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think we're going to talk a bit now about how a CV looks now, aren't we?
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so just a bit around CV advice. Again, I'm looking at CVs every day of the week, so I know what I like and what I don't like, and what we need to see and don't need to see. So the CV basically is an overview of your employment history, your education, and your skills. So it shouldn't be war and peace. You need to keep it robust, detailed, clean, and concise as much as possible. So a couple of tips around that. Like, I suppose, again, putting myself back 10 years ago, my CV, I hadn't barely had a page to fill, and that's okay. It's how you go about that. But for anyone that's maybe a bit more experienced and a bit more of a career behind them, it's going to be 2 pages max. Anything after that is not really relevant. Because again, I'm scanning through it quickly and looking at a lot of CVs every day, so I don't want to be looking 3, 4, 5 pages. So again, I'll show you an example of my CV in a minute, but your name should go in big bold at the front. Okay, it should stand out, and no photos, fancy fonts or crazy colors. It is an excuse for people to screen you out. You don't know who's picking up your CV sometimes at the end of it. So they're looking at someone and they go, what's this? This is, crazy. I'm not interested in this. I don't care what you look like. I don't care about your colors and your fonts. So keep it as simple and clean as possible. Don't put your address in or your date of birth. Again, people can look at your address and they can associate, maybe the distance you might have to travel, you know, and say this person is not going to, you know, travel that distance after 6 months. They're going to get fed up and bored, and they're not going to be happy. So I'm not going to, you know, you could be coming from South Dublin across the M50 into North Dublin, sitting in traffic. They're not going to do that. So people will screen you out. And again, they could be discriminatory towards your address as well for whatever reason, whatever issues they have. So we would just say leave your address out. Your date of birth, again, is similar. People can be ageist and they can screen you out because of your date of birth. So leave that out. They'll ask about that later on, but get to the table first, get in front of people first is what we'd say. Email and mobile number has to be on it. No stupid emails that will go against you. You know, you want to be serious. So if you have, you know, silly emails, I think we all had them back in the day, but, you know, create a new one that's a bit more professional is my advice to you. And then, so in terms of the roles you're going for, what you're looking at, it needs to be keyword rich. And what I mean by that is it needs to be applicable to the job spec and the different traits that they're looking for, different, you know, attributes they're looking for in the role. So ATS stands for an attribute tracking system. So a lot of companies have these now, and it's basically an algorithm that screens your CV and pulls out all the keywords in it. So if you've got a job spec and you think, right, that sounds interesting to me, it's a, you know, a business developer, I like what that looks like. You need to tailor your CV towards that job spec, and that will hopefully, if you're putting it into a company in HR picking it up, that will hopefully bring that to the top of the table, and you know, they'll look at your CV and go, right, this person is good for the role, and they have the experience that's required, and they're selling themselves for this role. And then dates. So that's what I'm talking about here is dates, is your last role all the way down to your earliest role. That's the way it should be laid out, and I'll show you now in a minute on that. It should be linking. Ideally, there's no gaps. If there are gaps, you know, make them known that you were traveling for 6 months wherever you were, or you know, or there should be a reason. Because when people like myself or HR pick up your CV and there are big gaps in it, we're kind of questioning, why is there a gap? Was there something up? Are they not a good worker, basically? So make sure that's known if there are any gaps from your time. And then typos as well. Like you see some CVs come in and people say, I'm diligent, I'm whatever, and you look at it and you see a typo and you're going, you're not diligent. You know, you've sent in a CV and there's X amount of typos in this. So they will screen you out. Certain people will. So make sure, get people to look over for you, 1 or 2 people, you know, 3 people ideally, to look through before you send it off, because there's no excuse for that really. So again, what's your unique selling point? So this is your personal profile. It's, you know, 5 to 6 line synopsis on yourself, what you're about, why the company or the organization should hire you. So that needs to be clear. You need to know what you're talking about, and it needs to be relevant to the role. And I'll show you an example of that now in a minute as well. Work experience, again, in chronological order. So from your most recent role all the way down to your earliest. Giving examples of what you did and what you achieved in that role. It's important to own what you did, and have an understanding. If you're in a sales role where it's target focused, that you know you drove revenue by 16% in Q1, raising revenue to 100k or whatever it might be. But owning your achievements in there is important. Education, if you have a master's or a degree, there's no need to put in your leaving cert results, so don't be putting them in, they're not as relevant. But obviously, if you haven't completed a degree or you haven't got a master's or you just got your leaving cert, obviously you need to put them in. Hobbies and interests, I would say put them in. Some people might say don't, but I think it's important. I think, yeah, again, it shows you're human, and it might strike up conversations. There might be the hiring manager that's interviewing you might have an interest in sports or in areas that you're interested in, and straight away you're creating a rapport with them when you go into the interview, and things are more relaxed as well, possibly. So there's no need to put references are available on request at the end of your CV. It's just a little, a thing you see a lot of times. There's no need. We'll always check references, so we'll always ask anyway, so that there's no need to state that at the end of your CV. So again, just a review, have people look over your CV. You know, if you can get, you know, someone who's good, a grammar, a recruiter, or a HR person, or, you know, executive leader. It doesn't have to be, these are examples, but get people to look over it. They may, you know, give you tips, and point out some, you know, issues maybe with your CV. And then finally, make sure that you have a polished CV and it's reflected like LinkedIn in your LinkedIn profile. So that's probably for another one, but LinkedIn is so important these days. It's where I do a lot of my work, I suppose, where I find a lot of people in the searches that if I have, for instance, I'm looking for a brand manager or a marketing manager, I will go LinkedIn and create a search, and that will pull in all the relevant marketing people in that space. If it's in, again, the food and drinks industry, for instance, it will pull them all up. So you want to be in that mix ideally. So your LinkedIn profile is so important, and it will become more and more important as time goes on, because that is the space that people are operating in now. That is the professional Facebook. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile with a proper photograph, again, pretty much copy and pasting your CV with a photograph, you won't be found in searches. So that's just one tip. So again, this is my CV, and I have no problem sharing it with you guys. So that's, again, at the top, my name in bold, my mobile number, my email, and then my LinkedIn profile. Again, it's important these days to have that added in, I feel, because that's straight away where I'll go to suss people out and see and get a bit of a better idea what they're about. And then the little synopsis, the personal profile on yourself, 5 to 6 lines, again, getting across what you're about, what you're going to bring to the table. And again, for me, my one reads, motivated by helping people achieve their goals whilst being part of something bigger than themselves. Shane is a people person with excellent relationship and rapport building skills. Ability to think outside the box when roadblocks arise, allowing him to find solutions to difficult situations. A former professional footballer, Shane has brought many valuable attributes from a successful sporting career into his career off the pitch. A driven leader who is equally comfortable working off his own initiative and has a proven track record of achieving agreed targets. So in my role nowadays, my role is a sales role. Basically, it's very target driven. I have, you know, targets I have to hit every quarter, every year. But a lot of what I'm doing now, like, I was doing it in a different way from playing the game, and I only realized that since I've started doing this role. There's a lot of pressure on it, as there is every Friday night. Again, I have KPIs and targets I want to hit, as there are every year, you know, in terms of the position you want to be in the league and what you want to achieve. So it is very relevant to what we're doing, what we're doing, you know, in our sporting careers, and it can absolutely transfer over to, you know, a career after sport. So it's just getting that personal profile right, getting it as best as possible and as relevant to the role as possible. But again, as I said, I'm happy to help anyone with that if they need at different stages. And then you're on to the roles that you've had, your career. So my most relevant position is where I am at the moment as a recruitment consultant, and what I do on a weekly basis, daily basis, and my achievements to date in that role. So again, a lot of my stuff is developing new business and delivering on that then as well, in terms of finding roles for different candidates and placing them with our clients. And then I have targets every year. As I said, I have to hit every month. Obviously difficult times at the moment, so these are harder to achieve, but that just gives you an idea of the first part of the CV. Then again, going back down through my experience in my career, and this is what it would have been like when I was starting off looking for roles and, you know, looking for jobs. It was, you know, professional footballer, and that was it, and trying to beef it up as much as possible, and it's hard to do at times, but that's my middle part of my CV. And then down to your education. So again, I probably mentioned earlier on the I suppose the roadblocks and the beliefs I had, or negative beliefs in myself towards education. I was only sitting down the last couple of days and looking at this, and it was, I know that it's 2017 to 2019 there is most of my educational achievements. Probably 2016 some of them started, but they finished in 2017, and like, it took me that long from 2009 to, I suppose, build up the courage to go back and jump into the education again. But in the space of 2 years, I'd done quite a bit, which I didn't really realize until the last couple of weeks. So, I think it's important because a lot of people, sports people, are not going to have too much to show on their CV in terms of recent employment. If you can show that you made an effort, you went out, you tried to upskill and educate yourself in different areas, that will absolutely go for you in the long run. So I would advise that, and figuring out what areas are of interest to you, and then again, your hobbies and your interests and your accomplishments in this, if it's the sporting space, absolutely put them in. I said it could open a door for you. It could, it's a build rapport straight away for an interview. It could be that's how it starts, and the majority of the interview could be just talking about your sport and career, and you could end up getting the role at the end of it. So, absolutely put that in.
The first one that came through was you were talking about LinkedIn and how important are your other social media channels in terms of a recruiter looking at your, suitability for a company.
Yeah, I would say be careful what you put up on social media, as we all know, it stays up there, and I definitely will, and most good recruiters will, and companies will look at your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, and to see what you're being involved in. They don't want to hire someone that is not, good for the brand, or good for their organization. So, I would say be careful, what you do. Don't put up anything that you're not proud of, or that can go against you. So, yeah, definitely be careful on that front.
And what about on the other end of that? What if you have no social media channels at all?
Maybe more of a positive. But no, I think that there's very few nowadays that have it. But I wouldn't say it's a negative, depending on what role you're going for. If you're going for a social media marketing role and you've no social media outlets or platforms that you use, I think people would, or the hiring manager would be questioning that. But if you're going for a role in an industry that it doesn't involve social media or the digital space, I wouldn't I wouldn't be worried at all about that. It's probably more of a benefit, really. They can't find you.
Do you think there is any benefit in, say, I know looking at the people on the call here, there's a few of you that don't have social media channels. And I'm wondering, is there a benefit in, if you know you're going to retire in the next 5 to 8 years, is there, or even a shorter time period, is there a benefit, do you think, in cultivating a personality online that, demonstrates the values of companies that you might be looking to get into?
Yeah, no, it can absolutely help you. In terms of the industries you're looking at, like LinkedIn, obviously it is a social outlet. It's more of a professional one, but absolutely you should be building that profile now, for the future. That is one that everyone should be looking at building. Um, if it's Twitter or Facebook, Twitter again, there's certain demographic that are on Twitter and Instagram that are maybe more aligned to certain roles or certain industries. So, um, that could possibly be an area to look at, and it may help you in finding those jobs or the areas that you're interested in to, again, to show the company that, you're active in that space, and you're passionate maybe about their brand. If it's in the not for profit sector, it could be a charity that you're interested in, that you'd like to get into community fundraising or corporate fundraising. So, getting a profile that that has a big following, or um that you're active in that area, definitely it would be important to build that profile over time. But I wouldn't just do it for the sake of doing
Sure. Yeah, it would be a pretty big time investment.
it. Yeah, I couldn't do it now. I'm
Build
not
that up.
not that good now.
Um, Quite a number of people have sent me a message about the way in which you've written your CV. So I think most people had assumed that we should be writing it in the first person, but yours is written in the third person. Is there a difference, much of a difference in terms of reading?
No, there's not. I think that's the way we would get a lot of CVs in. And again, from my point of view, when we're sending CVs on, we'd always write it that way. Or when we're tweaking CVs and sending it on to our clients, obviously it's not going to be I or me So we would tweak it, but like I don't see any issue with it. Being in the first person, I wouldn't say do it that way or do it the way I've done it. It's equally, as good and as appropriate, I suppose. Um, so I wouldn't deter people from writing in the first person. Certainly not.
Okay. And then a question around salary expectations. Can you give us an idea of what starting salaries might be in some different industries?
Yeah. So if you're a graduate, say for instance, with a degree behind you, depending again, if you're going into professional services side of things, which can be more lucrative for a grad or a junior role, you can be looking at anything from 40 to 45k, even starting off within, say, the likes of a PwC, KPMG, Grant Thornton, Ernest and Young in the tax space, the audit space. If you're that way inclined, accountancy roles, they would all, for graduates, be more lucrative, I suppose, in terms of starting salaries, for people. If you're going into a sales roles, especially for junior roles, graduate roles, the commission and the bonuses are maybe more heavily weighted than the basic salary. So, if you're, say, a business development manager for a drinks company, you could be looking at anything. If you're in Dublin, the salaries are going to be higher. So, unfortunately, for some of the lads down in the West or in the Munster region, they're not going to be as lucrative, for whatever reason. But if you're in that space, the drinks industry, business developer, you're looking at anything between 30 and probably 40k starting off, with incentivized bonus from anything from 5 to 20% on your basic salary. Plus, you get a company car, and more often than not, you get a laptop, mobile phone for those kind of roles. Again, marketing. So if you're in the digital space of social media, marketing exec role, you're looking at anything from 30 to 37k probably for a marketing exec, going into a company within the FMCG space or the food and drinks industry. And it will be quite similar across the financial services and into maybe the construction industry and that as well. The marketing exec roles tend to be quite similar in terms of salary, but you're looking at 30 to 37 probably k basic. Some companies offer bonus, some offer pension contributions, as well as healthcare, and other add-ons, depending on how big the company, the organization is. The big multinationals, the likes of, again, speaking to the food and drinks industry, the likes of Unilever, Mars, these kind of companies, Diageo, they would offer better benefits. So if you're into that stuff, they're the kind of companies you're looking at, and similar in the financial services side of things, the Grant Thorntons, the KPMGs, they offer better benefits and better holidays, all that kind of stuff. So, the bigger the organization tends to be, the better the benefits. But yeah, that's what I think a lot of people are looking at, and that's what would be my question as well when I was finishing up. How can I get X amount? I know for me it was important. I was looking at a mortgage, and I needed to figure out what I needed, to get that mortgage, what roles, what industries were going to provide that for me. So again, I went and spoke to the banks and spoke to brokers, and figured that out a couple of years in advance, so that I could make better decisions. So I need 40k a year. Where am I going to get that? And I went after it then, and figured it out. So these are the things, again, that maybe some of the guys and girls listening tonight are looking at and considering, mortgages, and what you need to do to get a mortgage, and what the banks need to see, and they'll make you jump through all sorts of hoops as well, even if you have a permanent role. So it is not that easy. But like, it's important again to consider, because it's important. It might be the biggest thing you do in your life, and it's a pain in the backside, but it's important to plan for these, and be realistic about it as well.
What do you think in terms of progression? So say I'm wondering, is anybody sweating at the idea of 30 grand salary there? How quickly can you move up?
It's again, it'll depend on, it'll vary on the company, and I think they're the questions that you would ask when you're going into interview, or when you're being put forward for a role. What are the opportunities within that organization? Like, it's probably no different to, choosing a club. Who's ahead of you? Who's in that position? What opportunities are there for me to progress if I'm a young player? And it's the same in a when you're going for a job, what opportunities are within that company, within that team? If it's the marketing team, is there a assistant brand manager there at the moment? Or you're going for an assistant brand manager role, you might want the brand manager role. They're only in the role 6 months. They're young. They're going to be there possibly for a couple of years because there's a marketing manager ahead of them that's in the role a year. So these are all the things you need to look at and ask as well. But it would depend from industry to industry. Some you can move really quick in. If you're going into the likes of an Indeed, say for instance, in a sales role, if you're good at your job, you will move extremely quickly within that industry, and you could be earning close to six figures within a year, from some of the stories I've heard in that industry. So again, it'll just depend again what you're motivated by, what you're interested in, and what industry you go into.
I think I'm aware of some industries that would assist employees in getting their education. If for the sectors that you work with, does that happen often? You would go in and they would help you with your professional exams or stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them would. A lot of them look after their people really well because it's a way for them to retain them. And again, for employee morale, and to feel like they're supported by their employer, they would offer, further development, educational development. And a lot of them you might have X amount of a budget a year to spend on education. I know that there's one or two in particular that are really strong in that space, a lot in the financial services. So they would be provide further education for their employees. It's a way. Some of them might even have it written into their contracts. If they pay for your degree or support you in your degree, you have to stay for 12 months on completion. But yeah, a lot of the roles, a lot of the companies I would deal with, they would provide some sort of further development educational wise.